Good morning guys, and welcome back to the studio. It has been a while since I have been in here. I've been off on holidays, well, this kids' school holidays, which technically aren't my holidays, but it means that I just don't get to come in here nearly as much as I normally do during the school term. So today is kind of my first big day back. And I'm going to do a bit of a reset because I feel like there's a whole new chapter starting every time the school holidays ends. I sort of move a lot of stuff home and then bring it back like I have this morning and yeah, get ready for another term. I also need to let you know that my confirmation of candidature happened before the school holidays started. So I might cross over to the video that I quickly recorded immediately after I did my panel so that you can hear about that then, and then I'll check back in over here and let you know what happened. I'm here in my home studio today because I just had my confirmation panel. I think it went well. One of my panel members couldn't make it, one of the external experts, so they recorded the session, so I delivered my presentation, and then we had a question answer time after. She will watch that on video and they'll do that process through that and confer and give me my, you're confirmed or not confirmed probably next week. So I'm a little bit on tenterhooks about that and won't know for a while. Usually you find out sort of 20 minutes after your presentation if you're approved. But my feeling is that it's probably going to be okay. So we will see. I guess I'm just going to dangle there for a little bit longer. So it didn't take very long at all. I actually heard within the next week that I had successfully completed my panel. I got really great feedback from the panel as well, which was super helpful. It's just so fantastic to have the opportunity to present my project to a group of really educated people that then feed back to me their thoughts about where they think this research could go, or sources that I haven't thought of looking at, or just a whole myriad of things. It was really helpful in the whole process of the bigger project of my master's. So I have my first supervision meeting after confirmation tomorrow. So I'm going to just spend today resetting. I've brought in some artwork that I've made over the last few weeks. And as you can see here, this big thing here is actually part of the artwork. It's a botanical that's going to be wrapped in lace. So I'll show you that as I put it together. And I also need to just go back through and redo my pin board. You might remember the big pin board I did from a few videos ago, which was, I had it set up with lots of different cards in planning and sort of mind mapping my master's confirmation. And now that I'm through that, I'm going to set it up for the next stage, which is actually figuring out my chapter structure and where I'm going to refine and take the research. So let's get started with today. I've got no time to lose, and yeah, I'll bring you along for the ride. So I did do a little painting over the holidays, which is this little streetscape that I painted of autumn in a town near where I live called Bright, near where I used to live, I should say. It's near where I grew up. So yeah, I was actually trying out, a friend of mine, Amy, lent me her water-based oil paint, which I've never tried before, and I am doing all of this work in traditional oils with solvents because I have this fan. But I wanted to try out the water-based because they are less toxic because you don't have to use solvents. And I was really unsure as to if they would do what I want them to do because I use a lot of solvent in the way that I'm painting these paintings. So my friend Amy allowed me to try hers out, and look, I'm pretty happy with how it's turned out, and I just wanted to compare it with what I've got going on here with this one. And look, it's pretty comparable in terms of doing what I want it to do. So I just wanted to bring that in to show my supervisors that I'd completed another one of the little oil paintings that I'm building up. I've also brought in loads more suspension files for my filing cabinet. I just have to show you this filing cabinet. I love it so much. I actually found it at an op shop for like $30, which was amazing. Beautiful timber, old-fashioned looking one. I'm going to be doing loads of going through particularly articles, resources that I need to read now that I have more direction for the project. And I want to sort of start to create index cards for each of them so I can start to arrange them on my pin board and get a really clear picture of what I need to read, where I need to go with the research, and just keep everything really on track. Under here, I have a couple of artworks that I want to put up on the wall. I put up some thumbtacks in the wall the other day, and I bought some really strong, tiny little magnets so that I can put artworks up on the wall, and I like to have the artwork around me to see how it's evolving in terms of a story and exhibition, and being up on a wall kind of helps me visualize that. So I just wanted to flatten them a little bit yesterday because they're watercolors and they're a little bit warpy. One of them's actually a collaged botanical on watercolor paper, and that did warp quite a bit, so I just wanted to flatten it a bit before putting it up. And I don't know how well it will have worked, but you can only try. I know they're crooked, and I actually wasted an inordinate amount of time yesterday on trying to get this whole thing working, so I'm just going to leave it to be a bit crooked and we're all going to live with it. I did also put up a couple of other little ones, which are these behind here. Sorry, I've got the pin board out, which I'm rearranging at the moment, but I put those guys up as well, which are digital prints, digital collages. And then these two are, this one on the right is a digital print with a botanical specimen collaged on top. And the one on the left is a watercolor of lace. The one on the right warped a bit when I collaged it. It was a bit experimental, which is a bit disappointing, but there you have it. I'm not sure if it'll end up in the final exhibition, but we shall see. Okay, this is a bunch of dried cosmos that I pulled up from my garden, which is quite huge. It's going to be part of my lace bouquets, which are wrapped in the paper lace baskets, which, if you haven't seen those before, here are some that I have made previously. So this is the latest edition. Over the holidays, I cut a new lace to wrap around this one. It's actually in here, so I'll show you once I've unwrapped it because the tissue is going to be really, really noisy. I'm so happy none of the flowers broke. It's got these really delicate spindly heads on here, which I'll show you in a sec. And it's been really windy and rainy here lately, and I was thinking, oh, if it's really windy and rainy, I'm going to struggle to get them in here tomorrow without them blowing off and breaking because they're so delicate. But they haven't broken, and I'm really pleased. I'll just give you a look at what they look like. Here they are, the little delicate little dried heads of cosmos that came out of my garden at the end of summer. And then the lace that I finished cutting the other day, I'm actually going to trace that off onto a piece of watercolor paper before I put this together and put it up, because I'm making artwork similar to this one where I'm playing around with the shape of the lace and the negative space. So I'm very gently going to pull that off because it's not yet attached. Make a tracing. This one's a portion of a piece of lace, so it's kind of this beautiful fan shape, which I love. My process in working with the laces and the shapes and this kind of detail reduction that happens with each of the processes that I am using with the lace, which is firstly it's digitally, it's scanned and then it's edited and then it's printed and then it's cut out, but not every tiny little hole is cut out. So each time I create an artwork from the last artwork, a little bit of detail is lost and it becomes something slightly different. And one of the reasons that I'm playing with that idea is because I feel like that's what happens throughout history and throughout the way that we interpret history. And each time as a culture we go through another phase in the way that we interpret history, we lose detail and we lose context and we lose understanding. And so it's always you're dealing with this imperfect information, even when you are conducting yourself and your research in the best way possible. So that's sort of my idea around this working with the lace, to reproduce different versions of it that lessen in detail as time goes on. About 6 weeks until I go to Europe for a few weeks with my husband, and before then I would really like to have come up with a structure for my exegesis. It's a thesis basically, but we call it an exegesis in practice-based research. And I really want to come up with a bit of a plan for the chapters before I go away, so that I've got some really good direction in terms of where I take further research. Because one of the biggest challenges with doing a master's or a PhD, and I'm really feeling it with a master's because it's a smaller project than a PhD and it's something I have to be mindful of, is to keep my focus quite narrow, which in some ways is really frustrating because I'm really interested in all of the things. I kind of just want to do everything, but there is simply not enough space in the exegesis and in the scope of the work that I present in my exhibition to be able to do all the things. So whereas I started out with a very broad focus in female painters of flowers in Australia in 19th to 20th century, I've ended up focusing in on just one person, which is Louisa Ann Meredith, which in some ways is kind of weird because, you know, it's not because I'm 100% devoted to her as a historical figure and that's what framed it. It's because I had to choose something really, and I just couldn't let go of her. And there's a lot of really interesting reflections that have come up in response to my researching her. And so she's become the focus, but she's not like my favourite person or anything. It's really kind of weird how you have to narrow things down at a postgraduate level. I need to narrow down even further in the thematic ways that I am going to focus on my work and my research on her as well over the next little while, and decide what the focus of the chapters are going to be in my exegesis, or start to get a clearer picture, so that my research that I do from here on in is very relevant and pertinent to the research questions that I've come up with, which are focused on my artistic responses to Louisa Ann Meredith and what I'm learning about my spiritual connection to nature through researching her and her spiritual connection to nature. So part of the challenge of doing the masters is that I'm constantly just having to make sure I balance my time between the creative work, which is what this is, and the thought work, which I will get onto very shortly, and start with the first step of coming up with the plan, which for me is to go through my source material and start to put together my pinboard mind map to start thinking about what I already have and which directions feel like the most compelling to move into for the rest of the project. Anyway, okay, I'm going to stop there. have here some other things that I've brought from home. The first is a heated blanket, just for when I'm sitting at my desk for hours on end, because I do often get cold. I've got my bullet journal, my noise cancellation headphones, because sometimes it's very loud next door and I need to block it out. I've got some vintage bottles. I bought these years ago or was given them, I can't even remember. I think they might have come from an antique store. What I'm using it for is to capture all the tiny little bits. I don't know if you can see them in there, but they're the bits that I've cut out from the lace that I have down here. And the whole idea of retaining those is that they're the pieces that are usually nothing in a piece of lace, but in using the process that I've used, I've actually made them into a something. I've made them into a material something, which in the discourse around lace and contemporary art means something which I won't go into here because I need to keep focused on what I'm doing. I also have my Kindle Scribe, which I use to annotate PDFs that are digital. I have these are my project journals. So I had just made these leather covers from some old leather I had lying around to keep my moleskin coheres in. So this is my new journal that I've just started as of this semester, with this idea that I just told you about in there. Took some photos and just writing a little bit about that, and also one of the new digital collages I did. And then this is my one that I've just finished from last year, the last year of my practice. So I started mid-year. So it's just got like illustrations and things that I've done as I've worked through different ideas, and then sort of summarising my confirmation of candidature and what I've learnt. So I need to leave that out for tomorrow. Also brought in my sketchbook journal, which I also made a cover for. So this one I want to leave out for tomorrow as well, because I've been working on this while I've been away. I also have like just little palettes and things that I keep in here. I might show you this another time, but basically I made this little holder for my art toolkit, watercolour and gouache palettes, so that I could just keep everything in one place. And then I have a few documents that I've printed, primary sources and things. So the reason that I'm keeping these pieces that I've removed from the lace cuttings is because, as I mentioned earlier, there is a bit of a theme that I've read a lot about in a lot of feminist approaches to particularly art of the 19th century, and also traditional women's crafts such as crochet and lace making, which is about, from the point of view of symbolically what is spoken through a piece of lace. These negative space areas of nothingness, which often are referred to as a metaphor for the silence of women through history, their absence in large part from the historical record, really interesting perspectives. And part of what's happening through the way that I am, suppose, interrogating the symbol of the lace, the symbology of the lace, and turning it into something else through scanning it, printing it on cotton paper, and also then cutting it out and creating a new three-dimensional object out of it, is that I'm giving the spaces substance. And I am, through my research, I hope, giving voice to ideas that may or may not have been had by women of the 19th century, but also comments on this idea of the absence of women from the historical record. Because one of the challenges with working with a historical figure like Louisa Ann Meredith, there's many aspects about her that I do not like, is that we can't really ever know what she personally really thought, because She was as a Victorian woman living in a colonised country, a country colonised by the British, she was very limited in what she could say and what personal opinions she could have. She was known to be a very opinionated woman, and you read that in her books, but she was still limited in what she could say. So look, I'm still fleshing out all these ideas, and it's helpful for me just to reflect on them here as I'm putting these tiny bits into a jar, because it might look insane that I am actually bothering to even retain these little cut pieces and doing that. So I wanted to explain why I'm doing it. And these, I hope, will be exhibited alongside the laceworks, because it's interesting when you're making an artwork, you're making what we call in the academic setting an artifact. You don't always know what it's going to turn out like, because it's such an experimental conceptual process that unfolds over many, many months. So I didn't know that I was going to do this. As time has gone on and this project has unfolded, it has become clearer to me what these pieces are about. So it's really interesting being in an academic process with art, because you learn to follow the process. It's very intuitive. It is for me anyway. I don't know that it is for everyone. I've heard quite a few different artists say that when they started their PhD or their masters, that they had a very clear vision of what they wanted their exhibition to look like, and they worked toward that from the very beginning, and it was very clear. That is never the case for me. I never have a clear idea of what I'm producing. It's always intuitive, and it always unfolds over time, and I just kind of follow the process. And this is a perfect example of that. I don't know if these will end up being exhibited with it. This might end up being one of those ideas that I thought was so brilliant at the time, but as time goes on, it might not actually end up fitting at all with what I end up in my final project. So it's all a very interesting and experimental process. But yeah, I really wanted to share this idea with my supervisors tomorrow, because I think these as objects could exhibit really nicely next to the actual cut laces, and I think they change the way that those cut laces communicate, because the materiality of what I've created is more obvious, and also the meaning behind it maybe will make people ask questions about those very things that I've talked about. Just going to give you a bit of a close-up of the new shelf arrangement. I like to have a fiddle around with my displays of my objects as things progress, because each time I do it, it sparks off different ideas. And I'm really pleased with what's evolving in here at the moment. This little collection of digital collages of Louisa Ann Meredith, I think, are really compelling, and they're not like anything I've ever made before. And it's really helping me to have them up on display so that I can be considering them as I move forward with other work. This is for anyone that's from overseas, which I know is a few of you. These are called kangaroo paw. They're a native flower that are called that because they look a little bit like kangaroo paws. Hey there guys, it is several hours later. I've been working away on my pin board and getting all of my references organised, getting photocopies of articles, all kinds of stuff that I've been doing since I've been off camera. So what I've been doing is going through my confirmation of candidature document where I've kind of outlined the bones of my research, and I've redefined all of the categories that I had up on my pinboard previously. I've gone through and written out reference cards for all of the references that were new that I hadn't got up there because I just got into writing it and I kind of just lost the flow with that. So now I'm feeling like I've captured everything and I can get it up on the pinboard and know that what my resources that I've already collected are for those different subcategories, and be able to sort of check off that I've read them all and start to think about how I can construct my writing around that. So I'm feeling pretty good about that. I'm going to get to pinning everything up and then I reckon it will be time to go home. So yeah. I think that's done today for me. I've got all my new categories up there. I'm feeling a bit clearer. I've also got an idea of areas where I want to do more research, and I actually have done some of that research online. I just haven't transferred it here, so I'm going to do that tomorrow. But yeah, that brings us to the close, I think, of today's reset video. So I'd really love to know, let me know in the comments how you like to reset. Do you have a ritual of resetting? I know that resets are really important for me. I've always had a ritual in relation to different phases of creative work that I'm doing, where I need to reorganize, tidy up, create a whole new space in terms of how I'm thinking about my work and the project that I'm working on. So I'm really curious to know if you have rituals like that too, and what they are, like what works really well for you to kind of reorganize yourself for the next phase. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you have stayed until the end, why don't you give me a push pin emoji? Is there even a push pin emoji? I don't know. If you can't find a push pin emoji, write push pin in the comments. Yeah, it's always fun to know who stays until the end, and yeah, let me know if you've got any questions. I'm always happy to engage with you guys in the comments. And yeah, if you've got a minute, just remember to like this video. And yeah, if you haven't subscribed yet and you're interested in this journey I'm on, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Anyway, I hope you all take care until next time, and I'll catch you then. Bye.